Valley. Great honor to welcome you all here for this Green Line Extension Corridor Management Committee. This is my first CMC meeting as chair, but I am no stranger to the project, nor am I a stranger to many of you, so it's great to see all of you. I have to say, this Southwest Light Rail project has clearly been going for a lot longer than this council and previous councils, and I know we've all had different roles in it. I have worked with many of you, first as a civic person with the chamber, with the Itasca project, then certainly as Commissioner of Transportation. I was at the table on a lot of these issues, and not knowing I would get closer and closer every step, I got closer to this project, to the point where I'm now doing daily inspections in my lunchtime walk down to look into the tunnel and the Kenilworth corridor. So I'm when I start kind of helping to cement the concrete trucks, please stop me. But I'm just a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you who might be unmuted, I'm going to invite you to mute your line if you're not speaking. I think that's, we're all learning how to do that. If you have any other technical issues, please feel free to use the chat. We're kind of monitoring it. And I also have found that if you have other apps open, sometimes that causes a disturbance. We are recording this meeting. Met Council will be recording it, and we certainly invite those who might be from the public to share comments until about February 12th, so another week. You can add comments, and those will be part of the permanent record and on the website. So we'll make sure that the project website will, not only that, it will include our PowerPoint or any of the handouts we have will all be there for your reference. And that website is swlrt.org. So just as a way of introduction, why don't we can kind of, as they say, go around the room, but why don't I name a entity or a city or a county, and you can introduce yourself that way. So let's just start with Met Council, other than myself.
Do you want me to just jump in? I'm Molly Cummings, and I represent District 5, Hopkins, Edina, Richfield, and Bloomington, and I'm vice chair of the Met Council.
That's great. Yeah, just jump on in. I know there's a couple of the council members here.
Hi, I'm Linnea Atlas Ingebretson. I'm council member for District 6, St. Louis Park, Golden Valley, Bristol, New Hope, and the portion of Minneapolis west of Lindale, including Bryn Mawr.
Wes Koester, General Manager of Metro Transit.
This is Chris Ferguson with District 3. We have Eden Prairie, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, and all the communities around Lake Minnetonka.
And we'll meet the project team in a bit. Let's move on to Hennepin County.
Commissioner Debbie Gotel, District 5, that's Richfield, Bloomington, and most of Eden Prairie.
Irene Fernando, District 2, Hennepin County District 2, which is Plymouth, Golden Valley, Medicine Lake, kind of the northern third of Minneapolis, so North Loop, Northeast, North, and Bryn Mawr, and St. Anthony Village. And I'm also the new Rail Authority Chair.
And this is Commissioner Chris Latondras, Hennepin County District 6. That's Edina, Hopkins, Eden Prairie, our northern part of Eden Prairie, all of Minnetonka, and then 12 communities around Lake Minnetonka. And as all you know, Hennepin or Southwest Light Rail cuts right through the heart of District 6. So a lot of action here. Good to see everybody.
Welcome.
Hi, this is Ely Farhat from Commissioner Green's office. She is currently dealing with a booting up computer. She'll be on in a moment, though.
Lovely. Great. How about Eden Prairie?
Kathy Nelson, City Council. Ron Case, the mayor, cannot be here this morning.
All right. Minnetonka.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Shack, a council member for Minnetonka, sitting in for our mayor, Brad Weirson.
Welcome. All right, Hopkins.
Well, good morning. I'm Mayor Jason Gadd from Hopkins and excited to be here with the team this morning.
Welcome, Mayor. St. Louis Park. Oh, sorry.
Hold on a second. We get still.
That's all right. I'm Brian Hunke, council member from Hopkins. I just wanted to join and find out more information. So,
welcome, Brian. Sorry to jump over you. I know Jake was about to speak. So, St. Louis Park.
Yep, Jake Spano, Mayor. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you. Minneapolis. Going once? Well, Minneapolis doesn't care about this. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Edina? All right. How about MnDOT? I know I saw Mike here.
Yep, Mike Barnes, MnDOT's Metro District Engineer.
And how about the Community Advisory Committee? All right, the business, I see at least one from the Business Advisory Committee.
Yeah, this is Dan Duffy, co-chair of the Business Advisory Committee.
Hey, Charlie, this is Will Roach. Same with Dan. Thanks. Good to see everyone.
Great to see you. Okay, now just a catch-all. Did I miss anybody who would like to introduce themselves? All right, well, we have a lot to cover, but first, we need to review the minutes from, believe it or not, December 4th, 2019. I read it with great interest, knowing that, thank you, Interim Met Council Chair Molly Cummings, who chaired that meeting, and there was talk about an LONP and a impending FFGA. So now that was seemed like years ago. So is there a motion or any corrections that the staff can capture, any comments? And if not, can they get a motion to approve?
Cummings moves approval.
Thank you, Molly. Second?
Second, Fernando.
Thank you. All right, let's have Dawn Hoffner. Can you call the roll for approval?
Okay. Councilmember Cummings?
Aye.
Councilmember Ferguson?
Aye.
Commissioner Latendresse?
Aye.
Commissioner Gotel?
Aye.
Commissioner Fernando?
Aye.
Kathy Nelson?
Aye.
Mayor Gadd?
Aye.
Rebecca Shack?
Aye.
Mayor Spano?
As best as I can recall, aye.
Mike Barnes?
Aye.
Will Roach or Dan Duffy?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm not sure if Mayor Hovland joined in as of yet or not, but if he is on. Otherwise, anyone from Minneapolis, Mayor Frey?
Abdi Salah here from Mayor Frey's office.
And Sherzelli.
Aye. Thank you all. The minutes are adopted. I'll say we have a lot of information today, and knowing that we haven't met in a year, we've had a lot of communication. I will suggest that because we're getting in the phase of the project, the construction, this is, as we all are learning and know, this is very complicated construction process. So I think moving to quarterly meetings would be a good idea as we kind of get our arms around some of the changes and schedule. So if you have any thoughts otherwise, please let me know. I I know that when we think about the complexity, we're actually probably in a pretty important phase, and I feel much better about, given that we have gone through a lot of the risk elements over the past year, and finding the two challenges: the Secant Wall along the condominium projects in the Kenilworth area, and then the corridor protection wall, which Jim will get into. We really don't have the conclusion as to how much of a delay they will cause, but I think we will want to be as transparent as possible and kind of let you know in real time kind of what we are finding and what we're facing. So I think there is an opportunity today to learn more about that and to answer any questions. I really appreciate everybody's support for this project. Like I said, many of us have been involved in this for a long time. We are in the process of being 35% complete, which is amazing. This next year, we'll have some bigger opportunities. Hopefully, we can safely gather, maybe have some moments of celebration. There'll be a time when we'll actually be able to kind of see some of this exciting progress, in person. So I want you to know we all recognize the full benefits that are coming out of this project, but it's going to take. We have to continuing to kind of lean into it to get it done, and I really look forward to that. I'm very committed to doing it in a prudent and efficient and thoughtful way as possible. So with that, one thing as a way of introduction, in the year at Met Council, gotten much closer, as I say, to this project. I have known Jim Alexander for quite some time, but never quite as well as this past year. And I have to say, we are very blessed with an incredible project team. So I just know that we're going to be able to handle what is probably one of the most complicated projects in the country in terms of large infrastructure. So with that, I'm thrilled to hand it over to Jim Alexander, kind of take us through a little project update. Jim.
All right, thank you, Chair. This is Jim Alexander, Project Director. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, well, Jason, if you could advance to slide number 5, I think, to get us going here. So this is kind of highlights overview of the overall project. As the Chair mentioned, we have a full funding grant agreement now in place as of September. So that's a good thing. We're now fully funded. And there has been quite a bit of activity out there. If you haven't noticed, they've got a lot of bridges happening and other structures getting put in place, 35% complete. And you see the list of items that we've been working on thus far. And important piece I want to note is the private utilities. 94% of that, nearly almost 1,000 conflicts that we have for private utilities. That's a pretty significant milestone to achieve for this type of project. These type of elements usually plague projects such as this. And so we're sitting in a pretty good spot with that. Excuse me, I'll take a little drink here. I'm getting a little hoarse. On the public utilities, that's handled by our general contractor doing that work, and that's well on its way as we're sitting today. Our systems contract is well underway. That's more of a design build process right now. They're going through design reviews, and that'll be work will be following on our civil work as we get that done. Franklin, I have a couple images to talk about our O&M facility. We're doing some modifications there. That's well on our way to get completed this year. And we have 11 vehicles from California. Siemens is producing 27 vehicles for us, and I've got some photos of that as well. So next slide there, Jason. Maybe next slide there. All right. So as the chair mentioned, we have a couple of challenges, and I want to walk through these a little bit. Been talking to various groups about this issue. We did a town hall with Minneapolis and talked to St. Louis Park City Council earlier this week and Eden Prairie last night. The first one is the corridor protection wall, And it's about a mile-long extension of a corridor protection that we have to put in place between the BNSF tracks and the LRT train. I have an image on this in the next slide we'll get to in a moment. But this is part of our negotiations we had with BNSF. And I'd just say, you know, this element itself is not a surprise, but what the challenge is that as we were getting bid documents and we were getting bids from the civil contractors, we're still going through environmental review. So as a result, we had to look to add this as a change order. We knew that going in, and but I think as we've been talking to our contractor that we have on board now, the complexities are just kind of arisen through design reviews with BNSF and also just getting the work done. So maybe I'll go to the next slide there, Jason. So this is the location of where that corridor protection wall is. Go to the next slide, Jason. Kind of a little broader image. Essentially starts at Bryn Mawr Station, you see down the lower left, and heads its way. And the wall itself really extends itself just about east of 94. You see running up and down the slide there. And maybe the next slide there to kind of show you what this looks like in cross section. So down below is the corridor protection. And as you can see, it's really integral to the light rail guideway that we're building under that civil contract, and we have a freight train to contend with. And as we've been underway with work in this corridor, we're just seeing just the challenges we have with operating within an active freight line. We knew that going in, but just the reality of actually doing the work out there, just seeing that we do have some inefficiencies of doing the work here. For example, if a crane is located anywhere close that could potentially foul the tracks, we have to shut down operations. We have BNSF flagging out there to make sure things are safe. So it is something we have to do, but it does impact the productivity. And so this is going to be a change order to the contract that we're currently in negotiation with. So as the chair had mentioned, we don't have costs, we don't have the schedule finalized. This in itself is a big effort, and we're in the process of getting that negotiated and figured out with our civil contractor. I do have a follow-up slide to talk about this and the other element here, but maybe I'll pause there for a moment if there are any questions on the corridor protection wall, Chair.
Any questions for Jim on the big, we call the big wall?
All right. We'll move on to slide 10 then and talk about the secant. So this is our other challenge, and this is also in Minneapolis in the Kenilworth Tunnel. We had experienced some settlement as we're putting in the sheet piles that will support the earth, if you will, as we build the tunnel itself. And I'll show some images of what that meant. But in terms of looking at alternative methods, which we need to do because we're running next to a 10-story condominium building and an associated parking garage with the Calhoun Isles condominium buildings there, we need to really take a look at a different approach. And it's really out of an abundance of caution, we had to look at some alternative method to really protect those foundations of the adjacent buildings. And I'll show a cross section to give an appreciation of that. So if you could go to the next slide there, Jason. So this is where the location is in Minneapolis, again, between Cedar Lake off to the left and Lake of the Isles off to the right, and that see those blue water bodies there. And as I indicated, we're looking at an alternative construction method. We're currently finishing design on this secant wall. Maybe go to the next slide, Jason. Kind of get an appreciation of where that's located. So that's a little blue stretch. It's about 500 feet out of about a half mile of that dark band, which is where the tunnel's located, just north of West Lake Street Station, and just stops short of that channel between Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles. And because of this, we've had to kind of retool and figure out how to get this tunnel constructed, because it was originally intended to do a sheet pile on both sides of the tunnel along that whole stretch. And because we've had to leave that 500-foot gap out of play for the moment until we get design done, get a change order negotiated, we have to work with the contractor on sequencing of the tunnel construction. So maybe next slide there, Jason. So this is hopefully gives you an appreciation of what we're up against here. The original plan off to the left shows the sheet pile walls on either side, and you can kind of see what a sheet pile looks like if you're not familiar with that. Sheet piles are generally vibrated or pounded into the ground. In this case, we had to be very mindful of the vibration sensitivities in this area. So we had a press-in piler put the sheets in. The challenge with that we encountered is that due to boulders and really the density of the soil, we had to find that we had to auger in front of that or ahead of the sheet pile as we're pushing into the ground to allow the sheets to get in. Normally, vibratory method would be able to drive these things pretty easily, even with those boulder materials. But because of the augering, we experienced some settlement right adjacent to the tunnel excavation itself. And if you can imagine, it's not shown on that left drawing there, but there are footings that are very close to the tunnel there that I mean, we're talking feet and inches away from the sheet pile. We didn't want to risk the potential of damage to the foundations of the parking garage in that condominium building. And so we came up with an alternative method that you see on the right, which has a secant pile wall. And you can see what that looks like in plan view down below. It's essentially a series of drilled columns, if you will, and they're filled with concrete and they're kind of interlocked with each other. They drill into each other. And there's every other column has a steel I-beam in it to provide support. This is a method that kind of alleviates or mitigates that settlement issue that we encountered with the press-in piling of the sheets. But you go on to the next slide there, Jason. You can see, I think there's been a lot of questions about, are we modifying the design of the tunnel? We are really not. It's, as you can see on the right, or sorry, on the left, original plan compared to the right. The tunnel itself is essentially about the same. We do have to narrow up the wall on the right side of the tunnel a little bit, but it's still going to be able to withstand the provide strength that we need to have here. So what's really different here is we're going to be installing the secant pile wall for about 500 feet to support that area as the contractor builds the tunnel. So maybe I'll pause there for a moment if there are any questions on the secant, because it is kind of involved.
Any questions? I have to say, Jim, and just as a comment, we're all becoming kind of amateur engineers here, but you've explained what the secant pile wall is, and when you look, I invite others to walk in this area. You can see how narrow this this construction zone is, and we really are threading a needle with some very specific, robust, reinforcement. And I think working with the Condominium Association, I think they've gained some confidence that we're actually, in an abundance of caution, doing the right thing to not take any risk.
Mr. Chair, may I? I do have a...
Yes, please.
So yeah, it's understanding some of why we did this, because I've seen this in the change orders and everything. But I think just for everybody too, what does this mean as far as for cost of impact, and then into scheduling to redo this? How far along do we have to get materials? You know, all those kinds of things. Can you give us the big general picture of that?
Sure. Yes, Mr. Commissioner, I can actually, if you could hold on for a couple of slides, I'll talk about next steps about how we're processing through that and maybe address it through there.
Was there any other possibilities besides the secant wall, or were they even more expensive?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, there really isn't a lot of alternative here, given the tight confined space we have here. And, it's the other alternative is we could look at vibrating the sheets in, but that would cause some potential damage to the SECA building. And we have a very, very low threshold for vibration in this area. And it's just given the limited space, this is really the alternative we need to go to.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jason, maybe you could go to the next.
Maybe, Jim, this is Jim.
Oh, yes.
Maybe I could ask you a quick question about how how did you pick that particular type of reinforcement technique, the secant wall? You know, where else is that used, or why did you decide on that?
Sure. This was really chosen out of just our confined space. There are many other types of retaining wall types you could use, but given that we had limited right-of-way, we had to go to something that we could stay within our right-of-way, and this does that. This is actually used, I think if everybody's familiar with, there's a parking garage over by the Lagoon Theater that uses, you can actually see the secants as you're leaving the structure as you're exiting. You can kind of look off to the see the wall, and you'll see a bunch of secants. So this is something that's it's a common practice. It's more expensive than the sheet piling, but this is really the alternative we need to go to given limit. If we had right away going back several feet, we could have tiebacks, you know, those type of things, but we didn't have that luxury given the proximity of the apartment.
But here's a good picture. Here's a good picture of one, so you kind of get an idea.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just an image of you know, took this off the web. This is not our project here, but you can see the secants off to the left as again a bunch of columns that will support, and these white members going across. Those are called struts, and we'll have those off to the essentially the struts go from one side to the other, as you see in the distance. We won't have these diagonal struts here, but it allows an area for the contractor to build the tunnel itself within that supportive excavation, we call it.
Okay,
thank you. Next slide there, Jason. So maybe getting to the question from the commissioner is that you know, this is both of these elements, I'll just say they're major projects by themselves. The corridor protection given over a mile, and we had to go through a really extensive review process with BNSF. This was an important feature for them, and to make it robust and for their eyes, and so we met all those requirements. But because of that, it's going to be a fairly costly item. Now we are in the process on these next steps of negotiating a change order with the contractor on this corridor protection. So I don't have a cost for that at this moment, but we will hope to be having that identified here fairly soon. The other component is a secant wall, where we're just finishing up design plans. We look to have those done actually this week, get those into the contractor's hands. And we've been talking to the contractor about what this secant is going to look like to help minimize time and make sure that we're heading on a good path on this. And we'll need to initiate a change order on that piece. And then there's also that 500-foot segment that I mentioned that we have to have the secants in. That really causes looking at resequencing the tunnel construction compared to what the contractor was originally going to look to do with just sheets going down the whole half mile of alignment. And so we'll have to be negotiating a tunnel construction resequencing. This all leads up to we're going to be updating the project schedule, because both of these components being very significant in themselves, there are some ties in our schedule to areas in the west and the middle part of the project, the 14.5 miles. And so this is going to be a big lift to get this understood in terms of what our schedule is going to look like. And then once we get civil construction identified, we will have systems to think about in terms of how that contract is getting their work done, because everything's predicated on civil getting done in certain areas of the project and then systems following on. Now we're having those discussions with both contractors simultaneously. We're not just waiting for civil to get figured out and then systems. So we're looking at the project as a whole, but it really hinges on these two pieces getting these fully identified to ultimately get our costs and our schedule identified. So maybe I'll pause there for a moment, Chair, if there are any questions.
Chair Zilli?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Jake Spano. Thank you, Jim, for this presentation. Appreciated it the other night. My question really is about, and I know there are a few attorneys that are in this meeting right now. I'm not one. I'm curious if the city of Minneapolis has looked at this, their engineers have looked at this, they're comfortable with it. There's no concern from a structural perspective or legal perspective. And then also, given the proximity to the condominium owners, I'm curious what their engagement has been so far, or their legal representation and construction folks, just to make sure that we're not heading down a process where, in 5 years or something like that, there are concerns and problems. So curious to know, kind of from both a operational and construction process perspective, as well as a legal perspective, where is the city of Minneapolis at? Maybe somebody from the city of Minneapolis who's on this can speak to that, but also in terms of the condo association and the other folks that live in that area. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Mayor. Great question, and I'll just jump in to say hats off to the Minneapolis Public Works team, from the director to the chief engineer. Weekly meetings, they've really been at the table. But Jim, why don't you take us through this?
Yeah, maybe I could
question.
start that off. I'm not sure who all from Minneapolis is from Public Works is here, but maybe I could start it off. Is that Mayor? We've been coordinating quite a bit with the city on both these elements in terms of getting this work done. We've also been coordinating with the Calhoun Isles Association. We have kind of a small work group that we meet with at least every other week, and we talk about construction issues as well as this Secant Wall. So everybody's aware of this, and we're trying to proceed with eyes wide open on this piece, knowing it's a big change.
Well, I just wanted to raise it because obviously, having a conversation about it is one thing. Making sure that our legal I's and T's are dotted and crossed is another. So I just wanted to make sure that gets raised so that we proceed with, again, eyes wide open, but all of our sort of bases covered.
Who's ever typing, would you go on mute, please? Who's ever typing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remind people to press mute if you're not talking. Jason, that might be your.
All right, should we proceed, Chair? Or?
Let's see. Is anybody here from Minneapolis want to make any comments? If not, Jim, you can keep going, I think.
Okay, let's move on to, I think we can scoot down to slide 19, just to kind of expedite things. Wanted to really kind of, it isn't just a bad news story here. There's been a lot of work out there, and if you hadn't had the opportunity to kind of cruise down toward Eden Prairie through all the cities, I welcome you to do so. We've got a lot of things out of the ground now, and this starts out at Southwest Station. Just to get you all grounded here, we are building a station that will cohabitate Southwest Transit bus activity with our light rail trains, and we're building a 450 stall ramp. You can see off to the right here. That's kind of the starting point of getting the foundation work, starting the column work. All these columns out here, we have about 27 miles of piles that are going to ultimately go into this station. We have about 70% done complete. Still a bit of pile of work to do, but this area is well underway in terms of the work. Next slide, please. All right, kind of just turn yourself around and 180 degrees, and we have our Prairie Center Drive Bridge that lifts out of that Southwest Station, and you can see an inset here. There's some artwork that the city has introduced into the project on the piers. This bridge is well underway, and in fact, they're out there working, probably working today on some sidewalk areas. Next slide, please. Make our way just east of Prairie Center Drive, or Eden Prairie Town Center Station. This is road work. Guideway will ultimately be off to the left side. We've been working on roadway and retaining walls in this area. Next slide. I think the next slide is the station itself. So we kind of turned ourselves back to look west at the town center station, starting to take shape. The retaining walls are part of the project that we built last year. Next slide, please.
Some night work that occurred, boy, I think this goes back to summer fall time frame on 490 over 494, where we installed beams for the LRT bridge that goes across. Next slide, please. And just kind of further inching towards the east, and you can all these photos have a map to show you kind of what the location of where these photos are taken if you're interested. So this is down Flying Cloud. You can see some of the retaining wall work off to the right. We'll have our guideway on that area. This is just south of the Valley View Bridge. I think is coming up next. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the Valley View Bridge. It goes over the on-ramp to 212 down Eden Prairie there. That bridge is well along on its way. Got railing up as I noticed last night as I went by. Next slide, please. Another bridge over 9 Mile Creek. This goes over Flying Cloud Drive in Eden Prairie. This is deck work is out and now done. This is, of course, earlier this summer, not just a few days ago. We're a little chillier today than what this shows. Next slide, please. This is Golden Triangle Station. So this is at the near 70th as we look towards the north, and off in the distance on the next slide we'll see the another significant bridge that lifts off of the station. Next slide there, Jason. For the bridge that goes over Shady Oak and 212, the contractor is actually involved in putting bridge beams over Flying Cloud and Shady Oak over the next few weeks here. And so that work is still ongoing here. Next slide, please. So construction highlights, just what's going to be looking at for 2021 work. And we have maps that are associated with all of this. And maybe we'll just go to that, that map just to kind of expedite things. And I can talk to these points here. You can go to the next slide there, Jason. Sorry, next slide after that. And so these maps are intended to show kind of more the high profile items and kind of things to note where we have the blue diamonds. Those designate where pile driving is still going, whether it's foundation piles or it's a sheet pile for shoring. You can see at Southwest Station, we still have some work down there to do. Another 30% of that 27 miles of piles to still be done. A little bit of work around the town center station for retaining structure, fairly minor. We have up by Shady Oak, just towards just south of the City West station there, we have still a couple of bridge piers and abutment to do for piles. And at City West, we have a lot of retaining structure up there that would require some shoring. The other point that I wanted to note is where we have red line work, that's where roadway closures are anticipated. We have a couple of phases of construction still to do on Flying Cloud, phase 3 and 4, where we are closing various lanes to get our work done down there. And the orange line work is where there's a lane closure. So you can see in terms of roadway closures, we have on and off ramp at 494. And as we scoot up towards 70th, that'll be closed later in the spring when work can commence again after the thaw. And we also have an off ramp that goes up to Shady Oak there, up the top there, that will be continue to be out of service until we can get that work done along that stretch going up to City West Station. So maybe I just pause on each of the cities, Chair, see if there are any questions before I venture on to the next.
Great, and there is so much happening in Eden Prairie, well, in every city, but any questions on this activity?
All right.
Sure. Mayor Hovland, you're raising your hand. You might be muted.
Incredible amount of activity in Eden Prairie, and just wondering about as you move up into Minnetonka and then into Hopkins and then on into St. Louis Park, what kinds of activities are we seeing in those respective communities?
Yes, I will have some slides to talk to that.
Yeah, stay tuned, Jim. We're gonna get in. We're gonna come down. We're working backwards. We're working north here.
I don't hear Jake. I don't hear Jake complaining. So there must be good things coming.
That's
I'm not, and as a matter of fact, Jim presented to council last week, and for Mayor Hovland's awareness, I think Jim estimated we're probably a quarter of the way through construction in St. Louis Park. I think our biggest issue, which we raised with Jim, we don't need to talk about here, but it just sort of for everyone's situational awareness, is a strong sort of sense from us, and I'm sure I share other communities along the line shares, about depending on what the impacts of the construction schedule are, making sure that to the extent reasonable and practical and safe, that we get the bike trails back opened up, even if it requires, other temporary detours in other areas. If we can get bike trails opened in Hopkins and we can't get them opened in St. Louis Park, let's get them opened in Hopkins, because as we all know, that's a tremendous asset to the entire line, and was one of the reasons I think one of the benefits of having the co-location of light rail and that bike amenity. So, but no, good things are happening, exciting things are happening, but we're just eager to see those bike trails open up again.
Thank you, Mayor, and Jim. You can move into the next cities, but I will say I have learned new places within Hopkins and St. Louis Park I never knew about with all these detours. So it's but it would be good to get that back in place. Keep going, Jim. We can
Okay.
get to these other
All right. Let's Jason, let's go on to slide 33 and we can talk about the 62 tunnel. This is image earlier. We were still shifting the lanes around on 62, but we've essentially finished the structure for the tunnel on the north end or east end in the Minnetonka side, and that's where work is now commencing on the south side in Eden Prairie. And really appreciate MnDOT and the cities cooperating with us. It's been quite an endeavor to get this, get all these lane shifts going. And I know it's been a challenge. We keep knocking on people's doors to ask for things. And I appreciate you at least hearing us. But this structure is well on its way. As I said, a lot of work on retaining walls and the tunnel itself on the Eden Prairie side will be ongoing this year. Next slide, please. So we have some retaining walls. We got a lot of retaining walls. There's 127 retaining walls in this project, so it kind of never ends. But we're progressing, nearly 50% done there. This is an image near Opus Station. Next slide, please. I think the next slide is the Opus Station. We get to the next slide. There you go. That's the station's well underway, and more work will be happening in 21 on that structure. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of involved here. Smetana and Feltel roads are going to go over the LRT. So you can imagine kind of the LRT going through that gap there and going off into the trees. That requires some extensive retaining walls and bridges to accommodate. And we're working on this Smetana Bridge work now, and Feltel will be coming up. Next slide. So in terms of highlights, why don't we, again, for sake of just kind of efficiency, why don't we move to slide 38 and we could kind of talk about these pieces here. So again, Highway 62, the north segment, there's still going to be ongoing finishing work with that. Most of the work, structure work, however, is going to be on the south side to build that piece of the tunnel. You see some blue symbols again there where there's going to be some more sheet pile for shoring in those locations. As we get up to Feltel area, there's going to still be some piles required. And then the long bridge we have, the Minnetonka Hopkins Bridge, you can see that kind of just south of the railroad tracks that runs diagonally south of Shady Oak Station. We still have piers for pile work and abutment as it reaches down towards that Smetana Feltel. And you see the roadway closures there. We look to have Smetana opened up later this year, and that bypass we have, we'll have to close that off so we can start working on the Feltel piece. So that'll be some more challenges with detours and whatnot. A lot of retaining walls through this area, going through a very hilly area, and some of that does require some shoring. Maybe I'll pause there, Chair, if there are any questions on the Minnetonka segment.
Any questions? No? All right, let's keep going.
Well, let's go on to slide 40, then we'll step into Hopkins here. And this is the Minnetonka Hopkins Bridge. one of our bridges that are, you know, it's well over 1,000. I think it's almost 3,000 feet in length. A lot of cooperation. Really appreciate the city of Hopkins coming to the table with us. So we had to work on some access pieces to get better access to this this bridge to do the work, and that's all working well. And so that bridge is well underway. As we move to the north on the next slide, we'll go up to the Shady Oak Station, and that structure is well on its way, kind of dormant over the winter right now in terms of work. As we keep progressing toward the east, the next slide there, Jason. This is 11th Avenue crossing. This was done earlier in 2020, so this is where the LRT crosses over. So we essentially have what's called the tub sections, if you will. The rail will still need to be put in place, and that's all going to be recessed into that tub. And so folks can drive over there easily. Next slide, please. So downtown Hawkins Station, that's again probably just a little dormant right now. Most of the station work is dormant over the winter just because of the cold weather, and we'll be picking up things in the springtime. Next slide, please. We have a pedestrian tunnel that goes under Blake Road at Hopkins, and so we've done the west side, and we'll be doing the east side coming up in 21 here. Next slide, please. So this isn't something from Star Wars. This is actually a box girder bridge, and pretty significant. LRT will be on top of that. And it's such a large structure because we have about a 400-foot span to go over the Excelsior Boulevard roadway and the railroad tracks. And we need to be about 23 feet clear, I believe, to make that happen. And so the structure needs to be pretty stout because of that span, and thus the big box girder. And so contractor is still working on some elements of this. They'll probably start to slow down as we get through the winter and start picking up in the spring as the warmer weather comes. Next slide, please. So why don't we do the same thing, Jason? We can go to the map and talk about the elements here. So not a lot of pile driving in this area, but we do have some roadway closures at 8th Avenue. We need to do some closure there to do the crossing for the LRT at that location. We'll have a little bit at 5th Avenue. At Excelsior, that's going to be as that work progresses. You can imagine as we're going across the roadway, we will need to shut down lanes and then possibly actually have roadway closures as that structural work gets over active roadway lanes, just to keep things safe. We don't have motorists going underneath us as work is making its way across that roadway. Blake Road will revert traffic over to the west side of the roadway to do that tunnel work on the east side and to complete that pedestrian tunnel. That tunnel has been a bit of a challenge for us. We've got some tricky utilities, and just the fact that it's cast in place concrete, we couldn't do a precast because we're below the groundwater. It's posed some challenges, but we're getting through it. Maybe I'll pause there if there are any comments or questions on Hopkins.
Sure, Chair Zilli and Jim, this is Mayor Gadd. First, yeah, with the Blake Road, I'm very appreciative with the project office on how you've been able to work with us on maintaining access and the roadway access on especially Blake Road with that tunnel construction. I know we had to have it fully closed for a while, but maintaining it access at least one way during this is very key for the residents that live in that area. And I concur with Mayor Spano too on getting the trails open as soon as we can. Even before the end of the project would be key. And then the final comment, it's one that I know when you presented in front of Hopkins Council here a little while ago, one of the major concerns that we still have is in relation to the Shady Oak Station and the park and ride facility with the 1,000 parking spots that are scheduled to go in that station area. Continue to have some discussions on options for that, and I know we'll be reaching out again with the project office to you, Jim, and taking a look at maybe what other options we can continue to explore on that. But just appreciate you being willing to continue that discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mayor, I appreciate those comments. Yeah, to get everybody dialed in over at Shady Oak Station off to the left here, our current program has parking on the north and also on the south. And we have to do a change order because of the OMF. We took that out of the project, and I committed to the city that we would defer, at least for the time of doing the parking lot at the south end of there until we can, if we can get something figured out on a parking ramp. Of course, we did. The funding is the question, and I did indicate the project doesn't necessarily have the funding for that, but we're open for partnering to see how we can get that done. So I think we still need to have more conversations on that, certainly. I should probably address maybe my big elephant in the room. This Cedar Lake Trail. We had planned to have this open in 21, and just due to really complexities of what we got in hand, we aren't. I'm just being frank with everybody. I don't think we're going to make that. We're probably looking in 22. And as I talked to the City Council of St. Louis Park earlier this week, those of you who know me, I'm an avid bicyclist, and I'm on these trails, making sure we can get these done as soon as we can, and we will continue to push that. I would say, as a bicyclist, there are alternative routes to get through east-west. They're not as nice, certainly, as the trail, but I use them quite a bit. But I won't drop the focus on this trail stuff. This is important to me just personally, so we'll keep a fine-tuned eye on it.
Thank you.
All right, maybe we'll step into St. Louis Park. Other questions?
Sure.
You're bearing with me with all the photos. I thought it'd be good just to show some images of what's going on out there if you don't have a chance to get out to see what's going on. So this is a bridge that we're building over the Minnetonka Creek in St. Louis Park, just over the border from Hopkins, and we built the freight and the regional trail bridge, and the LRT bridge still needs to be done. They'll start work this year, as I'll talk about when we get to the map. So you progress further to the east there. Next slide. So this is the trail bridge, and you can't see on just next to it, but the new freight bridge. Ultimately, there'll be an LRT bridge that gets built just a little bit south as we make our way down to Louisiana Station, which would be off the left of this slide. Next slide, please. Another tunnel, Wooddale Avenue. This actually has been completed. The structure is completed all the way through. Thank you to the City of St. Louis Park for accommodating our closures. We still will have some closures as we look to get the LRT crossing just south of this, but that has really helped to get through this. This has been an easier tunnel to do because it's precast. We don't have the groundwater table to contend with, and with that said, anytime, just for all of you, anytime you're building something, if you can build it above ground, you consider that. Going below ground, there's always all these surprises, and as we're finding, it's just you're going to encounter things you had no idea, and that's just my personal recommendation as we've been lessons learned on this thing. Let's move on to the next slide. So Jason, I didn't gear you up on this, but I was hoping you can animate this. Just click on this to show. This is the freight bridge that got put in place over the, I think back in September. I don't know if you're able to do that. No, we essentially took a 2-hour video and condensed it in a couple of seconds. And if we can't activate it here, this will be on our, we'll have the link for you to take a look at your leisure. But essentially there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 6 rollers, hydraulic rollers that work in concert with each other to move this bridge that weighs about 1.2 million pounds and about 50 feet movement. The contractor geared up a lot of time to do this. I think we had about 8 hours of prep and got it done in about 2 hours. It was actually a pretty efficient operation. I was pretty impressed. Worked closely with MnDOT on the closure, of course, and so we have that in place. That thankful to MnDOT to doing some early preparation so we could get this going fairly seamlessly. Now allows space to build the LRT bridge that's just off in the distance beyond this bridge that got started last year. We'll be doing some beam or deck work later in 21 here. So next slide, please. And this is a truss that on the regional trail bridge that goes over a belt line. In this case, we have two of these trusses. This one goes over the freight and near the station at Beltline, and we'll end up making our way back to the ground surface on this trail. And so that was just done about a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, and a pretty impressive structure we have there. So next slide. Why don't you go to the map here to Jason on slide 55 or 56, and I'll kind of walk through the pieces. So again, here the blue would denote pile driving. We do have a bit of activity still yet to do, and starting at the creek area for the LRT bridge, and moving over to Louisiana for the LRT bridge at that location. And then at the, you can see the pedestrian underpass. We have some pile activity associated with not only the satellite connector. You recall that we're connecting the Bass Lake Spur, which runs parallel to us on the alignment and links up to the M&S track that runs north-south through here. And so there'll be some pile driving associated with that structure, and also retaining wall work. And then a little bit of sheet pile work down at Beltline area, not to the big extent like they are for the bridges, but there's still some. I would say that we've got quite a bit of activity slated for this area. Louisiana has some challenging soils we're taking out, so there'll be a lot of earthwork activity in that area. And you can see there's some roadway closures. We're coordinating with the city on Louisiana as we take that freight bridge out, the existing one, to make room for the LRT. We'll have to take that out, and realizing there's another bridge off of the project the city's doing that is out on Louisiana, so we'll be coordinating that with them on that. And then Highway 100, as I mentioned, we'll be shutting that down, likely over weekend work to do deck placement in that location. So maybe I'll pause there if there are any questions on St. Louis Park.
So Jim Hovland, I got a quick question for you on this map. You called the pedestrian underpass, you called the Wooddale Station underpass. When I look on the map, it looks like it's closer to the Louisiana Avenue station. Is there just that one pedestrian underpass to kind of between those two station stops, or will there be another one?
Yes, it looks like I took that photo out for some reason, but there is an image that maybe we could share with the group that shows there's a pedestrian underpass that goes under the freight tracks, and essentially the regional trail goes down in grade to get down below everything, and then it'll go under everything to go over to the station. It's at Louisiana Avenue station, if that makes sense. And then the Wooddale is essentially that regional trail that's coming parallel to the alignment.
Okay, and what's the timing on that pedestrian underpass construction near the Louisiana Avenue station?
That's going to be kind of in concert with the work we're doing at the station itself. We have a lot of soil improvement, if you will, to do, and I don't know if that's necessarily on the radar screen to get completed yet this year, but I just don't have an answer for that on you. But I could maybe follow up. We'll follow up with some kind of correspondence to let you know.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions on St. Louis Park? Okay, well, let's dip into Minneapolis then. Go down to slide 58. Well, here's the tunnel. So this has changed quite a bit from what it looks like here. There's a lot more equipment up on what's called a gantry. You can kind of see in the distance, that's a system that rides along these beams, if you will, on both sides of the sheet piles are already in place on both sides. And so that mechanism, if you will, kind of runs up and down the tunnel. And the purpose is to gain access for removing soil and also placing concrete. And it's a pretty big operation that they have in place. They're about set, I think they're hopefully going to start the final depth of the excavation for this first cell. Again, this is a half-mile long tunnel that the contractor will be building in a series of cells, about 30 of them. And you can see the struts going across. There's generally 2 layers of those metal struts where that worker is standing in there. Those are those members going back and forth. Those are called struts that support the tunnel section while you while the contractor builds the tunnel. You can see off in the distance on the left, there's the Calhoun Isles condominium building, that 10-story building, and the, just point of reference, the parking garage is just to the south of that, so you can't see that, but it's just beyond that, that condominium structure. Next slide, please. So a lot of work on freight in this location. We built, this is the channel I spoke of between the two lake bodies, Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles. We have a new freight bridge, thank goodness, because we were having to contend with maintenance of the existing bridge, and we're glad to be done with that. So we have a very safe bridge that TCW can operate their trains over. Next slide. This is just an image that kind of shows the difference of when we're doing new freight. And we're going to have new freight all down the Bass Lake Spurs. We go through St. Louis Park and Hopkins, and in Minneapolis as well, in the Kenilworth corridor area, where you can see in the upper right what the improvements we've done, new rail, reballasting and tie replacement versus the old. And so we're actually putting more robust rail here than what is out there, what the existing is out there. So make things nice and safe for everyone out there. Next slide, please. So this is kind of debated whether showing this image is not a lot here, but this is 21st Street Station. You kind of just get an idea of the network of cabling that goes into these stations. It gets pretty busy. Of course, work is dormant here over the winter time. It'll be picking up as work allows as we thaw out. Next image, please. So this is, we've kind of scooted up towards the Wayzata subdivision BNSF track. We moved the track about 25 feet to the north in its present location in this photo. BNSF actually did that work. We had a very good coordination with them to do that. We also had to move the retaining walls to accommodate that, so that's all in a retaining wall structure. You can kind of see off in the distance the Glenwood Avenue pieces. There's abutment on either side that was essentially taken out that bridge, of course, to build essentially 3 bridges. There's going to be a roadway bridge segment on the east and on the west, and then the LRT, as you can see, those piers in the middle there where those cranes are, will be supporting the LRT bridge that runs through that. And so very, very busy operation here, and that work will be continuing as we move into 21, certainly. Next slide, please. So this might be the last image. This is up by Royalston. A lot of retaining wall work here as well, setting the bridge beams over 5th. This will end up wrapping around Mary's Place and making its way to the where we notch into the existing line over by Target Field. And next slide, please. Okay, similarly, I wonder if we could just go to the first map on slide 65. So we'll be working on Westlake Street Station. That has auger cast piles not driven at that location. I will continue with the freight rail improvement work. And that's one thing I didn't note. These maps do show where the freight rail improvement work is going to be in turquoise. So you'll see that in St. Louis Park and Hopkins as well. And of course, the Kenilworth Tunnel, that darker band going up, we'll be working on that. The first cell is going to be just north of that, where that Secant Wall is going to be, this time in yellow. And Cedar Lake Channel, we still have an LRT bridge to build and a pedestrian bridge ultimately. And we look to 21 working on the LRT bridge. We still have piles to drive on that north side, and probably more likely in later years, 22, that we would be looking to do the pedestrian bridge with the pile work as well. I mentioned the 21st Street Station that will be advancing. Maybe go up to the next slide there, Jason, to 60. So this saw the similar image with a quarter protection. This is showing where pile work is going to be happening. At the Bryn Mawr Station off to the left there, we have some retaining walls on the bluff there to get done, and elevator work to be done. This is going to have a kind of a skyway, if you will, a pedestrian walkway over to the frontage road just south of 94. Getting up to Bassett Creek, we show a designation for pile driving if we can get to that. That also has a elevator and a stair. We may get to that this year. Well, depending on the work on the quarter protection, which you see in the dashed yellow. And then off in Glenwood area, we still have some pile driving to do in that location for some of the structures, retaining structures. And likewise, as we make our way
north of Royalson Avenue Station, we have some pile driving as we make that connection into the target field. But the big piece here is the corridor protection work, which doesn't involve pile driving, but that'll be a big effort in 21. So I think that's it for Minneapolis. So maybe I'll pause there for a moment if there are any questions.
Any questions on Minneapolis?
All right, hopefully I'm not putting people to sleep here. Okay, let's move on to Franklin. We did want to just talk a little bit about Franklin off to the next slide there, Jason. So on 68 there, this is what the facility did look like. In next slide shows the improvements we're doing. We're essentially extending the maintenance bay and the sand wash bay. As you can see there, we're also adding a third story for our rail control center. So this work is well underway. We look to get this all finished up this year, and then maybe the next couple of slides show kind of what this looks like. So looking southward from that mess, that maintenance bay and the RCC up above, that's all enclosed now. This is an earlier photo, so work is mostly interior for that piece of the facility. Next slide. So we were in a conundrum when we dropped the OMF and trying to figure out what we're going to do with all our vehicles, because we were bringing 27 new vehicles, and this site is really crammed with vehicles. Typically, we like to store inside just for maintenance purposes, but in this case, we had to kind of do some look at efficiencies here. So we're looking to build some west runner track, if you will. This is along the west side of the building, of the storage area, that we're building some track to accommodate those additional vehicles that we'll be getting for the project. And maybe next slide. Might just go roll into systems, just a couple of testing. You can go on these next slides here. So these are just testing slides for part of our traction power that's underway, and the next slide for the OCS kind of first article testing. Next slide there, Jason. So this is down in Nebraska, I believe, earlier in December or so. And so testing is well underway, as well as design effort on that contract. Next slide, please. So light rail vehicles, you know, we're in a good spot with the vehicles. Unfortunately, we're not going to be in revenue service like we had intended. So we'll have 27 vehicles on our hands that we're going to start having to figure out how we work those. And we're already working with operations about how they're going to mix in with the blue and green lines as we speak. This is an image from the Siemens plant out in Sacramento, California, taken some time ago, but kind of give you an idea of how they put all these pieces together. It's actually pretty amazing to see them taking all the components on paper and putting them into a vehicle. Next slide. Just one of the things we did, kind of reminder for ADA accessibility, off to the left is our Type 2, and that's really the cars we bought for Central Corridor, the Green Line. And then our Type 3, which were 27 vehicles for this part of the project. We've expanded the aisleway, if you will, from, I forget what it was, maybe 20 some inches to about 40 inches to accommodate wheelchair access. We do lose a couple of seats, but we think this is a much, much better fit. We actually did some work with the Transit Accessibility Advisory Committee some time ago to really just did mock layouts to kind of see how best we could maybe have better accommodations. We think this is a good fit. Next slide, please. So that's a image. I think I even took this out in Sacramento. This is back in warmer. Well, it's always warm in Sacramento anyway, but this is earlier. This vehicle is in town now, and we're looking to get that on revenue service here very quickly. We go through a series of a lot of testing and commissioning of these vehicles before they can be certified to get into revenue service. So it's pretty laborious effort to make sure these vehicles are safe and operationally functional before we get them in revenue service. So next slide, please. Well, that concludes my piece, quite a bit. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Thanks, Jim. Because our time is short, let's jump right into our BBE and workforce update from John from our Office of Equal Opportunity, and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so let's jump to slide 80. And as Jim mentioned before, there's a lot of uncertainty regarding the schedule and cost impact. So we've received some concerns from DBEs about how this will impact them, and we're monitoring it pretty closely with the prime contractors because we do know that each DBE has a different type of scope within the contracts. So they will be impacted a little bit differently, but we trust that our engagement with the prime contractors and the DBEs will be helpful, especially when we start looking at different ways to address their concerns and looking at ways to resolve, the impacts and minimize the impacts. So here is the table of the achievement for the different contracts. As you can see, the civil contract is about 40% billed to date. And they've built up a 4% cushion there. The goal is 16%, and they're achieving 20%. So I think that will definitely help out moving forward in the project, considering that there are some unforeseen things. So we have a cushion there to help out. The systems contract, as mentioned by Jim earlier, follows pretty closely with the civil contract. And much of the work that they've been doing is some preparation for construction and preparation for getting out on the site. So it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And the DBEs, for their particular scopes of work, they are installing the transit power substations. So that's a big portion of the contract there. So once that starts, you'll see the DBE participation move upwards. And then the Ellis Black contract at the Franklin O&M, Jim just showed some of the pictures regarding the outside and building up the structure. So with that being done, we do have a lot of DBE participation and construction going on internally within the building. So counter to what we normally see around this time of year for construction, we expect that the Ellis Black team will be continuing construction on the Franklin O&M building throughout winter here. So that's a good sign for us. Next slide, please. So this is a trend chart just indicating the achievement over time. And we started with mobilization and actually started seeing more construction work in April 2019. So as you can see over time, we've been able to increase the participation and remain above the 16%. And that's where we want to be and try to hold on to this achievement consistently throughout the end of the project. So next slide, please. The systems contract, as you can see, just started last year. And as I mentioned before, currently we're at 10%. I expect us to be a lot higher once we start seeing the actual construction and the construction sites being handed over to the systems contractor. But overall, it's good to see the achievement moving upwards. So next slide, please. The Franklin contract just started in July 2020, and they're moving upwards. They are about a third of the way through. So their participation is also going to be going upwards. There are some items that I believe in the recent month they have built, and I believe they are a little bit higher than the 9.6% in this month, but it's a good sign for us to know that they will be doing construction throughout winter. So next slide. And then regarding workforce, this is the civil contract, and the participation on this overall workforce, women are at 8%, and people of color and indigenous folks are at 21%. So in the month of November, we do see an increase in participation, which is helpful in bringing up the overall cumulative totals. And then when we're looking at the women participation, it's not at 20%, but when you look at other larger construction contracts in the region, such as like the 3594W, contract over there, they are around 7%, and ours is at 8%, 9%. So we are a lot higher than what's going on in the region here. And I think it's due in part to the efforts that we've made to work with a prime contractor. And we meet up with the prime contractor to go over workforce good faith efforts to look at different strategies about how to increase participation for women and people of color. In addition to that, I also want to acknowledge our partners at the Minnesota Department of Human Rights who do the monitoring and the compliance, and we support them in this. So it's a pretty close relationship, and we work with them to look at different ways where we can increase participation and hold the contractors accountable. In addition to that, we are also asking the prime contractor to dive a little bit deeper into their subcontracts and subcontractors to look at their achievement and hold them accountable too, because it's a team effort to achieve these numbers, and it's not going to be achieved just by the prime contractor. So we're looking at all the different places to see where we can increase participation. Next slide, please. And then this is the participation over time. So you can kind of see we're kind of hovering at 8%. And this coming year, LMJV has a new equal opportunity compliance officer that we're working with them. And they are indicating that they want to roll out some new initiatives to increase participation. So we're looking forward to that, to see and work with them and support them in those initiatives to help promote them in our community, especially considering how many folks are out there looking for jobs right now. So stay tuned to see that. So next slide. And then people of color, it's increased. And I think that over time, we have more that we can achieve. On other contracts, we're seeing 27%. So I anticipate that this will also jump up as we continue along in the project. Slide 87, please. Okay, so this is the Franklin O&M workforce participation. I also want to say that we are not showing the systems contract just because the overall participation on the systems contract is only about 230 some hours. So it's pretty minimal. It's hard for us to really pull meaningful data for that. But if you're just looking at those 230 hours, the workforce participation for women is at 34% and people of color is at 29%. So, it's exceeding the women participation, and people of color, it's pretty close to 32%. So, but we anticipate that once construction starts, those numbers will, go downwards just in regards to the system work. But for the Franklin contract, we are also working with MDHR and Ellis Black to work with their subcontractors and look at different ways to increase participation. Throughout winter, we consider that participation will continue to remain consistent here just because of the winter and without having the slowdown as what's going on with other outdoor construction activities. So their people of color participation, you can see, is exceeding the goal. So that's very good for us to see, and we hope to maintain that as we work with them throughout the rest of this year. And then next slide, 88, please. So our monthly workforce good faith efforts meetings with them and MDHR, we started working with them in August, and you can kind of see some of the impacts that's had in increasing the participation and having the prime contractor be much more aware and try to search for different avenues to where they can increase participation. So these type of engagement and interactions between the different partners here is very helpful. And then next slide, 89. Thank you. And then as you can see here, the 27% is what I mentioned before, is kind of on par with what we're also seeing with construction around the region. We, of course, are always trying to look at different ways and different programs and working with community-based organizations to see where we can plug in some of their trainees and graduates from their programs to get onto these construction sites and work with these prime contractors with hiring. So. And then I believe this should be my last slide.
Thanks, John. I know that even myself, talking to the prime contractor, has confidence that the workforce numbers will increase maybe in the spring as we work with both the contractors, community organizations, some strategies to work on that. One question that came in the chat and from Councilmember Ferguson that I see is also in the minutes from a year ago is have you looked at this disaggregating the data from the DBE numbers? You know, it does combine women and other disadvantaged business. Maybe get a people of color, number for the DBE area.
Yeah, I believe that we did present some of that information at the council meeting. So I think that I can pull that up and share that out.
That'd be great, John. If we could share that with our CMC website, and maybe we can have that as part of our presentation. That'd be great. Any other questions from anybody on the call? Well, thank you so much, John, and I appreciate that this accomplishments doesn't happen with wishful thinking. It takes a lot of convening and work, and I know you meet at least every month with our own council committees. Let's move to the outreach, and Sophia Jennis has been working on our project communications, and welcome, Sophia.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. Jason, if you go to the next slide. So our outreach and communication team stays very committed to making sure our community is involved and informed in our construction as we're moving forward. Our construction updates continue to be a rich source of information for people to know what's going along the entire line, as well as our construction bulletins, where we really try to highlight major impacts. We have a very robust open rate, and the outreach coordinators really kind of help enforce that as they disseminate further into the communities and check in with folks. We continue to push people to call us through our 24-hour construction hotline. We always have that staff both with our outreach team and our construction team to address issues as they come up. I would note that our 3 outreach coordinators are very well known in the corridor and very well trusted, and people reach out to them. So that the number that we have here of calls represents really a small fraction of the work that they do. I'd say only about 1/4 of our calls come in through that way. Otherwise, people are reaching out to our 3 coordinators to talk to them directly, and we even get construction hotline calls that are, hey, David, Nikongo, James, we're trying to get a hold of you. Can you call us? Type thing. So that just really speaks to their efforts. Next slide, please. Our construction information work groups are a pivotal part of our work. We really rely on the community to help us refine and improve our communications, as well as talk deeply about what's going on. So the committees have continued to meet through the year. They all have a slightly different frequency in which they meet, and we will continue that work into next year. A couple things to highlight in 2021 is that we've kind of started some virtual town hall meetings, and we'll continue to do that. We also have some pretty exciting videos coming out that are virtual tours that we'll post on social media. As we've been in this COVID environment, we've tried to find innovative ways to reach and pull people into the project in ways that we can't really do in person yet. But assuming that later in this year, we'll all be vaccinated and it'll be safer to meet in person, we'll really start focusing again on having some more of those things where we can gather in person and show people construction activities. And the coordinators, they've found innovative ways to meet with people, whether that was Nikongo, just meeting at a park to give an update, or if we have on-site issues that we need to address. You can't do everything virtually. We maintain that social distancing. So that's a quick sum of what we're doing, and happy to bring the communities with us as we continue this project.
Thank you, Sophia, and you and your group have done a great job. I get a lot of comments about how disruptive this project is, and this is really terrible. But I love your people; they really are responsive. So it's good that we're doing the best we can and communicating as well as we are. I look forward to actually having in-person meetings, and maybe this year we'll have some elements to celebrate, like laying some track and look more like a real railroad. Any questions for Sophia on this outreach? Well, then I want to just thank everybody. We've covered a lot of material today. I know there's continuing opportunities to get updates. Keep track of those emails, the social media, the pictures, the town halls. There'll be plenty of ways to engage, but I really look forward to keeping connected with this CMC group, because we really are representative of the project as a whole, and it's important, I think, for all of us to kind of put our minds and hearts around this really important few years as we bring it into service. If there's any other questions or thoughts from anybody. Well, then I just want to thank everyone again for your continuing interest. If you can't find an answer or have a question, I'm easy to find. So is Jim Alexander. So we're all of us. So please feel free to reach out. And I really can't express enough our appreciation for everybody's time and effort. This is truly it doesn't take the whole village, it takes the whole metro, as we say, to get this done. So look forward to seeing you all soon, and this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you in, if not, in several months for our next meeting. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.